Your husband's account no longer exists on this authorization list, ma'am. Madeline Harper stared at the billing coordinator as if she had misheard her. That had to be a mistake. Her husband was Ethan Whitmore. The Ethan Whitmore, the millionaire investor whose smiling face appeared on magazine covers and charity gala invitations across Boston. People wrote articles about his generosity. Reporters called him a visionary. Yet somehow, on the night she needed him most, his name had vanished from the hospital payment records. A cold sensation moved through her chest. Not fear. Something worse. Confusion. Because 3 hours earlier, Ethan had promised he would handle everything. Now a doctor was waiting upstairs with urgent recommendations for her pregnancy, and the hospital required a $92,000 deposit before transferring her to a specialized monitoring suite. Madeline slowly lowered her phone and looked at the screen. 12 unanswered calls. She pressed his contact again. The ringing lasted only a few seconds before going silent. Voicemail. Again. Around her, the private hospital lobby remained polished and beautiful. Marble floors. Soft lighting. Fresh flowers near the reception desk. The kind of place wealthy families chose because they never expected money to become a problem. Yet at that moment, Madeline felt poorer than anyone in the building. Would you like to try another card? The coordinator asked gently. Madeline nodded. Her fingers trembled as she handed over a second card. The woman inserted it. Waited. Then offered an apologetic smile. Declined. Madeline swallowed hard. Can you check the account balance? The coordinator hesitated. Are you sure? Please. A few moments later the answer appeared on the screen. Madeline's stomach dropped. The joint account she shared with Ethan had been almost completely emptied. Not frozen. Not restricted. Emptied. She stared at the number in disbelief. That cannot be right. The coordinator remained silent. Sometimes silence was more painful than bad news. Madeline turned away and opened her banking application herself. The transaction history loaded. Large transfers. Multiple withdrawals. Several authorized movements she had never seen before. All completed earlier that afternoon. Her pulse quickened. Why would Ethan move nearly everything out of their shared accounts on the same day she was admitted to the hospital? Upstairs, her unborn son needed stability and observation. Downstairs, her financial security seemed to have disappeared without warning. Nothing made sense. Her phone buzzed. Relief flooded through her chest. Ethan. Finally. She answered immediately. Ethan. Music echoed through the call. Laughter. Glasses clinking. Voices celebrating something. Not a boardroom. Not an emergency meeting. A party. Madeline, I cannot talk right now. Her eyes closed. The hospital needs the deposit. I told you I am busy. The doctor said tonight is important. A brief pause followed. Then came a sigh. Irritated. Detached. Handle it tomorrow. Madeline looked toward the elevators leading to the maternity wing. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away. I cannot wait until tomorrow. Then stop creating drama. The line disconnected. For several seconds, she stood frozen beneath the bright hospital lights. Her husband had just called her situation drama. A nurse passing nearby slowed down, noticing her expression. Another employee glanced toward the billing desk. People could sense something was wrong. They just did not know what. Then another strange thing happened. The coordinator frowned at her monitor. That is odd. Madeline looked up. What? The woman clicked twice. Someone is accessing your patient account remotely. Madeline blinked. Ethan? No. The coordinator leaned closer to the screen. Her expression changed from confusion to surprise. I do not recognize this name. Madeline felt her heartbeat accelerating. What name? The coordinator looked directly at her. Who is Julian Cross? The question hit like a forgotten memory suddenly stepping out of the shadows. And for the first time that night, the mystery became larger than an unpaid hospital bill. Madeline felt the air leave her lungs. Julian Cross. It was a name she had not spoken aloud in nearly a decade. For a moment, the hospital lobby disappeared. The billing desk vanished. Even the anxiety pressing against her chest seemed to fade beneath the weight of a memory she had spent years trying to bury. Do you know him? The coordinator asked softly. Madeline opened her mouth, but no answer came. Once upon a time, Julian had known everything about her. He knew how she took her coffee. He knew when she was pretending to be brave. He knew the difference between her real smile and the one she wore when she was trying not to cry. Back then, before wealth and magazine covers and luxury homes, she had believed her future would include him. The coordinator looked back at the screen. Whoever this is, they have administrator-level authorization through a private trust office. Madeline blinked. What does that mean? The woman frowned slightly. Honestly, I am not entirely sure, but it looks like someone is reviewing your account in real time. Madeline stared at the monitor. Her pulse quickened. None of this made sense. Why would Julian have access to anything connected to her? How would he even know she was here? Upstairs, a nurse appeared near the elevators and called her name. Mrs. Whitmore? The doctor would like another update. Madeline nodded automatically. She followed the nurse toward the maternity wing, but her thoughts remained downstairs beside that glowing screen. The elevator doors closed. As they rose, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her hair was slightly disheveled. Her eyes looked exhausted. She barely recognized herself. Years ago, she had imagined a very different life. When she married Ethan Whitmore, everyone said she had won the lottery. He was successful, charming, generous, and public. Their wedding photographs appeared in local society magazines. They bought a historic townhouse overlooking Boston Harbor. They attended charity events and fundraising galas. From the outside, they looked perfect, but perfection had a strange way of hiding cracks. Ethan controlled nearly every financial decision. Ethan decided which friends were worth keeping around. Ethan preferred that she stay away from company matters because, as he often said, it is less stressful for you. At first, those choices sounded protective. Later, they felt isolating. The elevator opened. The doctor greeted her warmly and reviewed her latest results. Fortunately, her baby remained stable. That should have brought comfort. Instead, one question kept circling through her mind. Why had Ethan emptied their account? The meeting ended 20 minutes later. As she stepped back into the hallway, her phone vibrated. Her heart immediately jumped. Another message from Ethan. She opened it. Stop calling. I am handling important things tonight. We will talk tomorrow. Madeline stared at the words. No mention of the baby. No mention of the hospital. No concern. Just distance. Then another notification appeared beneath it. A social media update. One of Ethan's colleagues had posted a photograph less than 10 minutes earlier. Madeline tapped it. Her stomach tightened instantly. Ethan stood inside an elegant rooftop lounge overlooking the city skyline. Crystal lights glowed above him. Champagne glasses filled nearby tables. Standing beside him was Claire Donovan, his executive assistant. Both were smiling. The caption read, "Celebrating the biggest deal of the year." Madeline lowered the phone slowly. While she had been begging for help at a hospital billing desk, Ethan had been celebrating. The realization hurt less than it should have. Perhaps because some part of her already knew. Then her phone vibrated again. This time the number was unfamiliar. No name. No profile picture. Just a single text message containing 7 words. I know what happened to your money. Madeline froze. A second message appeared immediately afterward. And Ethan does not know I know. Madeline stared at the anonymous message until the screen dimmed in her hand. I know what happened to your money. And Ethan does not know I know. A chill moved through her despite the warmth of the maternity floor. The sender was unknown. No name. No profile picture. Nothing that explained how a stranger could possibly know what had happened inside her marriage. For several seconds, she considered deleting the messages and pretending they never arrived. Her life already felt complicated enough. Then another notification appeared. This one contained a screenshot. Madeline opened it. Her breath caught immediately. It showed a transfer confirmation from one of the joint accounts she shared with Ethan. The date matched today. The amount matched one of the missing transactions she had seen earlier. Someone had access to information they should not have. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Before she could decide what to do, another message arrived. Do not respond. Just check your email. Madeline's pulse quickened. She opened her inbox. Buried beneath promotional advertisements and hospital paperwork sat a newly received message from an unfamiliar encrypted address. Attached was a document labeled Financial Authorization Record. Her stomach twisted. She opened it. At the bottom of the page sat Ethan's electronic signature. The transfer was real. The account had been emptied deliberately. Not by a hacker. Not by a bank error. By her husband. Madeline lowered the phone slowly. For months, she had blamed herself for the growing distance in their marriage. She told herself Ethan was stressed, busy, overwhelmed. She defended him to friends who questioned his behavior. She defended him to herself. But documents did not care about excuses. Documents only recorded choices. A nurse walked past, and offered a polite smile. Madeline returned it automatically. Nobody around her knew her world was quietly unraveling. Her phone vibrated again. Another message. Look at the recipient account. She returned to the attachment. Near the bottom was a destination account name. She froze. It was not a corporate account. It was not an investment vehicle. It belonged to a private trust. Her confusion deepened. Why would Ethan move family money into a private trust without telling her? Then she noticed something else. A second name appeared beneath the trust registration. Claire Donovan. Madeline blinked several times. Surely she was misunderstanding something. Claire was Ethan's executive assistant. She organized schedules, managed meetings, handled travel arrangements. Yet her name appeared directly beside the destination account. Madeline felt her heartbeat pounding harder. Suddenly the photograph from the rooftop lounge seemed very different. The smiling faces, the celebration, the secrecy, none of it looked innocent anymore. Before she could think further, her phone rang unexpectedly. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello. Silence greeted her at first. Then a man's voice spoke. Calm. Professional. Mrs. Whitmore? Yes. My name is Daniel Mercer. I work for Cross Capital. Madeline sat upright instantly. Cross Capital. Julian Cross. Why are you calling me? She asked. Mr. Cross received an emergency notification connected to your hospital admission. Her heart skipped. You spoke with Julian? A few minutes ago. Madeline swallowed hard. What did he say? Another brief pause followed. Then the answer came. He asked one question. Somehow she already knew. Daniel continued. He asked whether you and the baby were safe. Madeline closed her eyes. 10 years had passed. 10 years of silence. Yet that was still the first thing Julian wanted to know. Not why she was there. Not who she married. Not what happened between them. Whether she was safe. Daniel spoke again. Mrs. Whitmore, there is one more thing you should know. Madeline opened her eyes. What? The man's voice remained calm. Mr. Cross is already on his way to Boston. For the first time that night, Madeline forgot about the missing money, because a much bigger question suddenly stood in front of her. After 10 years apart, why would Julian Cross drop everything and come for her now? Madeline remained motionless long after the call ended. Julian Cross was coming to Boston. The words echoed through her mind with a strange mixture of comfort and unease. 10 years ago, hearing that he was on his way would have made her heart race for completely different reasons. Now she sat alone in a hospital, 8 months pregnant, staring at a future she no longer understood. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. I told you I am busy. Stop making this harder than it needs to be. Madeline read it twice. Not once did he ask how she felt. Not once did he ask about their child. She slipped the phone into her purse and looked out the window toward the city lights. Boston glowed beneath the dark sky, beautiful and distant. Somewhere across that skyline, her husband was celebrating a business deal while she sat in a hospital wondering why their shared accounts had been emptied. The realization should have made her angry. Instead, it made her tired. A nurse appeared at her door. Mrs. Whitmore, we are still waiting for financial authorization before moving you to the monitoring suite. Madeline nodded slowly. I understand. The nurse hesitated. The billing department said someone has been reviewing your file continuously for the last hour. Madeline already knew who that someone was. The nurse smiled politely and left. Silence returned. 20 minutes later, another notification arrived. This time it came from the hospital billing office. Account status updated. Madeline opened it immediately. Her eyes widened. The $92,000 deposit requirement had disappeared. She blinked and checked again. The number was gone, replaced by a different message. Financial hold removed. She stood up so quickly that the chair rolled backward. There had to be some mistake. Grabbing her purse, she hurried downstairs toward the billing department. The coordinator recognized her immediately. Mrs. Whitmore. What happened? Madeline asked. My account changed. The woman smiled. Yes, it did. Why? The coordinator turned her monitor slightly. Because someone guaranteed full responsibility for all medical expenses. Madeline stared at the screen. There it was. A name she had not expected to see again tonight. Julian Cross Private Trust. For several seconds, she could not speak. The coordinator continued. Everything has been approved. The specialized suite is ready whenever your doctor requests the transfer. Madeline looked down at the authorization record. The amount was unrestricted. No spending limit. No conditions. No requests. No questions, just approval. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. She remembered calling Ethan 12 times. She remembered begging him to answer. She remembered hearing music and laughter in the background while he dismissed her concerns. Meanwhile, a man she had not spoken to in 10 years had solved the problem without asking for anything in return. The automatic doors near the hospital entrance suddenly slid open. A rush of cool night air entered the lobby. Several people turned instinctively toward the entrance. So did Madeline. At first she noticed the security team, then the assistants, then the tall figure walking calmly between them. Julian Cross looked older than the man she remembered, more confident, more composed. Success seemed to follow him without effort. Yet the moment his eyes found hers across the lobby, something familiar remained. For a brief second, neither moved. The noise of the hospital faded into the background. The distance of 10 years felt both enormous and strangely insignificant. Julian's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. Not with pity, not with judgment, with concern, genuine concern. Then his gaze lowered briefly to her pregnancy before returning to her face. He took several steps forward. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Finally, he stopped a few feet away and asked the first question anyone should have asked hours ago. Madeline, are you and the baby okay? For a moment, Madeline could not answer. Not because she did not know the truth, but because nobody had asked her that question all night. Doctors had asked about symptoms. Administrators had asked about insurance. Ethan had asked her to stop causing problems. Julian was the first person who asked whether she and her baby were actually okay. The realization hit harder than she expected. She nodded slowly. The doctors say he is stable. Relief flashed across Julian's face so briefly that most people would have missed it. Madeline did not. He looked away for a second, collecting himself, before returning his attention to her. Good. That single word carried more sincerity than every message Ethan had sent all evening. Around them, the hospital lobby gradually returned to life. Phones rang. Nurses walked past. Conversations resumed. Yet Madeline felt strangely disconnected from all of it. 10 years disappeared with alarming ease. Julian glanced toward the billing desk. They gave you trouble? Madeline let out a quiet laugh. That is one way to describe it. His expression darkened slightly. You should have been moved upstairs hours ago. They could not authorize the transfer. Julian followed her gaze toward the monitor. That will not be a problem anymore. The certainty in his voice was impossible to ignore. Before Madeline could respond, her phone vibrated again. Ethan. She stared at the screen. The timing almost felt absurd. 12 missed calls had not mattered. Hours of silence had not mattered. But now he was calling. Again and again. Julian noticed the name but remained silent. He had always been good at that. Years ago, when they were younger, he never pushed people to speak before they were ready. Some things apparently never changed. The phone stopped ringing. Seconds later, a text appeared. Where are you? We need to talk immediately. Madeline stared at the message. Not are you safe? Not how is the baby? Not I am sorry. We need to talk immediately. As if she were an employee who missed a meeting. As if tonight had happened to him instead of her. Julian studied her expression. Ethan. She nodded. Suddenly he has time. Julian said nothing. The silence somehow felt kinder than criticism. Another message arrived. This one shorter. Did you contact Julian? Madeline blinked. There it was. The real reason behind Ethan's urgency. Not concern. Not guilt. Julian Cross. Somehow Ethan already knew. Before she could process that thought, the hospital entrance doors opened again. A tall man in an expensive dark coat stepped inside, moving quickly across the lobby. Ethan Whitmore. Even from a distance, Madeline could see the tension in his face. His usual confidence looked strained. His tie was slightly loosened. His expression carried something she rarely saw. Worry. The moment Ethan spotted Julian standing beside her, his pace slowed. For a second, nobody moved. Two men, one from her past, one from her present, standing beneath bright hospital lights. Ethan approached carefully. Madeline. His voice sounded unusually controlled. She did not answer immediately. Ethan looked at Julian. I heard there was some confusion with the hospital. Julian raised an eyebrow. Confusion? Ethan ignored the question and focused on Madeline. Why did you involve him? The words hung in the air. Madeline stared at her husband. After everything that had happened, after the unanswered calls, after the empty accounts, after the hospital delays, that was the first question he chose to ask. Not how she felt. Not whether the baby was safe. Why did you involve him? And for the first time all night, Madeline realized Ethan was not afraid of losing her. He was afraid of something else entirely. Madeline looked from Ethan to Julian and suddenly felt exhausted by both the question and everything behind it. Why did you involve him? The answer seemed painfully obvious. She had not involved Julian at all. She had called her husband. Over and over again. Ethan's jaw tightened when she did not immediately respond. I am talking to you, Madeline. For years that tone had worked. Calm. Controlled. The tone of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Tonight it felt strangely hollow. No, Madeline said quietly. You were talking about him. She pointed toward Julian. You still have not asked how your son is doing. The words landed with uncomfortable precision. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time all evening, he appeared uncertain. Julian remained silent beside her, showing no interest in joining the argument. Ethan looked around the lobby before lowering his voice. Can we discuss this privately? Madeline almost laughed. Privacy. Ethan suddenly cared about privacy. Not when she was sitting alone at a billing desk. Not when her calls went unanswered. Now. Why? She asked. Because there are things you do not understand. Ethan glanced briefly toward Julian. About him. Something shifted in Julian's expression. Not anger. Recognition. As if he already knew where the conversation was heading. Madeline folded her arms. Then explain. Ethan hesitated. The hesitation itself felt revealing. 10 years ago, Julian disappeared for a reason. The words hung between them. Madeline stared at him. Memories she had spent years avoiding suddenly resurfaced. Julian leaving without warning. The unanswered questions. The silence. The heartbreak she never fully understood. Ethan continued carefully. There are things about that period you never knew. Before he could say more, Julian finally spoke. Be very careful, Ethan. His voice remained calm, but the warning was unmistakable. Ethan looked directly at him. Why? Because the truth makes you uncomfortable? Several hospital employees nearby glanced toward the growing tension. Nobody intervened. Nobody needed to. This was not a confrontation fueled by anger. It was something older. Something unfinished. Madeline felt her heartbeat quicken. What truth? She asked. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and removed his phone. He opened an old document and turned the screen toward her. You always wondered why his company failed. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. Madeline looked at the screen. It appeared to be an old business filing from nearly a decade earlier. Names. Investors. Contract dates. Details she barely understood. Ethan tapped the screen. Julian never told you this because he was embarrassed. Julian exhaled slowly. That is enough. Ethan ignored him. His first company collapsed because one of his partners stole from him. Madeline blinked. She had never heard that story before. Not once. Ethan continued. Investors ran. Contracts disappeared. The company imploded. He looked at Julian. Tell her I am wrong. Silence followed. Not denial. Not agreement. Just silence. Madeline turned toward Julian. Is it true? After several seconds, he nodded once. Partly. Ethan smiled without humor. Partly. Then he looked back at Madeline. What he is not telling you is who warned me before it happened. A strange feeling settled over the lobby. The kind that appears seconds before a major revelation. Madeline stared at Ethan. Who? Ethan held her gaze. Claire Donovan. The name struck her immediately. Claire. The woman whose name appeared beside the missing money. The woman standing beside Ethan in the celebration photographs. The woman connected to every mystery unfolding around her. Ethan lowered his phone. And if Claire knew about Julian back then, he said quietly. The real question is how much she knows now. The mention of Claire Donovan changed everything. Madeline stared at Ethan, trying to understand how the same woman kept appearing at the center of every unanswered question. The missing money, the rooftop celebration, the old business collapse. None of it felt random anymore. What exactly are you saying? Madeline asked quietly. Ethan glanced around the lobby before lowering his voice. I am saying Claire has been connected to more things than either of us realized. Julian folded his arms. Or you are looking for someone to blame. Ethan's expression hardened. You think this is about blame? I think this is about timing, Julian replied. Interesting discoveries always seem to appear when accountability arrives. The tension between them felt heavier now. Not because of jealousy. Because both men seemed to know pieces of a story Madeline had never been allowed to hear. Before Ethan could respond, Her phone vibrated again. The anonymous sender. Her pulse immediately quickened. Another message appeared on the screen. Do not trust what Claire says next. A second message followed before she could react. Check the attachment. Madeline opened the file. It contained screenshots of internal emails. Dozens of them. Her eyes moved rapidly across names, dates, and conversations. Then she froze. Claire Donovan. Ethan Whitmore. Subject lines discussing account transfers. Meeting schedules. Private trust documents. One particular email caught her attention. It had been sent 3 weeks earlier. Claire wrote only one sentence. She reread it twice to make sure she understood correctly. Once the baby arrives, everything becomes easier. A cold feeling settled over her. The words themselves were vague, yet something about them felt deeply wrong. Ethan noticed her expression. What is it? Madeline handed him the phone. As he read, the color slowly drained from his face. Where did you get this? Anonymous message. Julian stepped closer and reviewed the screen. Unlike Ethan, he did not look surprised. Concerned, yes. Surprised, no. There is more, Madeline said. She continued scrolling. Additional emails appeared. Financial authorizations. Private transfers. Discussions involving Claire and outside advisors. Then she found something else. A draft legal document. Her breath caught. It was incomplete, but the title alone made her stomach tighten. Post-birth asset restructuring plan. Ethan immediately grabbed the phone. He read the first page, then the second. His jaw clenched. I have never seen this. For the first time all evening, Madeline believed him. The confusion in his face looked genuine. Ethan turned another page. This was not authorized. What is it? Madeline asked. Ethan looked directly at her. A proposal. For what? His answer came slowly. To move family assets into protected trusts after the birth. Silence followed. The implication was impossible to ignore. Madeline felt suddenly lightheaded. Not because she understood every financial detail. Because she finally saw a pattern. Decisions were being made around her. Money was moving around her. Plans were being created around her. Yet nobody had included her. The realization hurt more than the hospital bill ever could. Across the lobby, several nurses began whispering near the reception desk. One of them glanced toward Ethan. Then another. Moments later, a hospital administrator hurried toward the group, holding a tablet. Ethan's phone rang simultaneously. He looked down and frowned. Board chairman. Madeline watched him answer. Hello. The voice on the other end was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear fragments of the conversation. Ethan's expression changed immediately. What do you mean it is online? More silence. Then another question. Who released it? The chairman continued speaking. Ethan looked up sharply. For the first time all night, genuine alarm appeared in his eyes. He ended the call and stared at the screen. Madeline felt her heartbeat accelerate. What happened? Ethan swallowed hard. Then he looked at both her and Julian. Someone leaked the hospital records. The lobby suddenly felt much smaller. Ethan lowered the phone and spoke the words that changed everything. The entire city now knows I ignored my pregnant wife while she was asking for help. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The words echoed through the hospital lobby like a door quietly closing on the life Ethan Whitmore had spent years building. The entire city now knows I ignored my pregnant wife while she was asking for help. Madeline looked at him carefully. She expected anger, denial, excuses. Instead, she saw something unfamiliar. Fear. Not fear of losing her. Fear of losing control. Ethan's phone immediately began ringing again. Then vibrating. Then ringing once more. Board members. Investors. Public relations executives. People who had ignored countless personal failures suddenly cared because the story had become public. Ethan declined one call. Then another. Then another. The screen continued lighting up. Nearby hospital employees tried not to stare, but curiosity spread quickly. Everyone knew who Ethan Whitmore was. And everyone now knew what had happened. Madeline felt strangely detached from the chaos. Hours earlier, she had been terrified about money. Terrified about the hospital. Terrified about her baby. Now the fear was gone. In its place stood clarity. The kind that arrives when a painful truth finally becomes impossible to deny. Ethan looked at her. Madeline, this is not what it looks like. The sentence almost made her laugh. She glanced toward Julian. He remained silent, standing a respectful distance away. He had not tried to speak for her once. Not all night. Ethan took a step closer. You know me. I thought I did, she replied quietly. The answer landed harder than any accusation. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. Another notification appeared on his phone. This time he actually opened it. His expression changed immediately. No, he scrolled faster. No, no, no. Madeline frowned. What is it? Ethan looked up. The confidence was gone now. Completely gone. Claire. Just her name. Nothing more. Yet everyone understood. Ethan handed the phone to Madeline. An internal company statement filled the screen. Claire Donovan had resigned effective immediately. Attached below was a second document. A formal declaration from company attorneys confirming that an independent review of several financial transfers would begin within 24 hours. Madeline continued reading. Then she stopped. One paragraph stood out. Certain asset movements may have occurred without full disclosure to all affected parties. Her stomach tightened. Claire was not disappearing because of public embarrassment. Claire was running from something. Ethan looked exhausted. She has not answered a single call. When did you last speak to her? Julian asked. Ethan hesitated. Earlier tonight. Julian nodded slowly. Interesting timing. Before Ethan could respond, Madeline's phone vibrated again. The anonymous sender. Her heartbeat immediately quickened. A final message appeared. No attachment. No screenshots. Just a single sentence. Check Ethan's email from 10 years ago. Madeline stared at the screen. 10 years ago. The exact period when Julian vanished from her life. Ethan noticed her expression. What happened? Slowly, she showed him the message. Ethan read it once. Then again. The color drained from his face. That is impossible. What is impossible? Madeline asked. Ethan looked directly at Julian. For the first time all evening, genuine guilt appeared in his eyes. Not business concern. Not public relations panic. Guilt. Julian seemed to notice it too. Silence settled over the lobby. Ethan swallowed hard. There was an email. Madeline felt her pulse accelerate. What email? Ethan looked away. An email I received 10 years ago. Julian's expression darkened immediately. Ethan. The warning in his voice was unmistakable. But Ethan continued. It was about Julian's company. Madeline stared at both men. Every unanswered question from the last decade suddenly felt within reach. Ethan closed his eyes briefly before speaking again. And if that email was real, then everything you believed about why Julian disappeared may have been a lie. The hospital lobby seemed to fade around Madeline as Ethan's words settled into the silence between them. Everything you believed about why Julian disappeared may have been a lie. For years she had carried that wound without fully understanding it. She believed Julian walked away when his company collapsed. She believed he chose pride over love. She believed Ethan had been the man who stayed when someone else left. Now every one of those beliefs stood on unstable ground. Ethan stared at the floor before finally speaking. 10 years ago, I received information about Julian's company before anyone else. Julian remained motionless. I thought I was helping. Ethan continued quietly. I thought I was protecting you from uncertainty. Madeline felt her heart sink. What did you do? Ethan swallowed hard. I showed you selected pieces of what I received. I never showed you everything. The truth landed with devastating simplicity. Not a dramatic betrayal. Not a grand conspiracy. Just a decision. One choice that changed 3 lives. Madeline closed her eyes. Suddenly she understood why certain memories never fit together. Why Julian's silence had always felt incomplete. Why the ending of their story never made sense. Her phone vibrated one final time. The anonymous sender. A single attachment appeared. Ethan opened it first. It was the original email from 10 years earlier. Unedited. Complete. As Madeline read it, tears filled her eyes. Julian had never abandoned her. The email proved he had spent months trying to save his company while protecting employees from losing their jobs. The final paragraph stopped her cold. If I survive this, I am coming back for Madeline. Silence followed. Julian looked away toward the windows overlooking the city. Even now, he seemed uncomfortable being the center of attention. Ethan handed the phone back. I should have shown you the whole thing. Madeline looked at him. For the first time all night, she saw genuine regret. Not because of public headlines. Not because of board meetings. Because he finally understood the damage caused by a single selfish choice. Hours later, Madeline was transferred into the specialized maternity suite. The stress of the night slowly gave way to calm. Julian remained nearby, but never pushed himself into decisions that belonged to her. Ethan stayed too, though at a respectful distance. For the first time in years, there were no carefully managed appearances. No public image. Only consequences. 2 weeks later, Madeline gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When she held her son for the first time, everything else seemed smaller. The money, the scandal, the secrets. None of it mattered compared to the tiny life sleeping peacefully in her arms. Over the following months, investigations revealed that Claire had manipulated financial records and private communications for years. The missing funds were recovered. Ethan's company survived, but his reputation never fully did. More importantly, neither did his marriage. The divorce remained civil, quiet, final. A year later, sunlight spilled across the courtyard of a new foundation dedicated to helping mothers facing medical and financial crises. Madeline stood before a crowd of families whose lives had been changed by the organization. Behind her, a small plaque listed the primary benefactor, Julian Cross. He hated public recognition, but she insisted. Across the lawn, her son laughed while chasing bubbles through the grass. Julian knelt beside him, smiling. Not because he was trying to replace anyone, because kindness had always been his nature. Madeline watched them together and felt something she had not felt in years. Peace. Nearby, a television crew prepared a segment about the foundation. On one of the monitors, a business interview with Ethan played silently. He looked older now, wiser too. Sometimes growth arrived through success. Sometimes it arrived through loss. As the afternoon sun warmed the courtyard, Madeline realized the hospital bill had been paid in a single night. But the lesson hidden inside that night would last a lifetime. Some men spend years building fortunes so the world will admire them. Others quietly show up when someone is hurting. And in the end, people rarely remember who had more money. They remember who stayed when it mattered most.